Welcome, everyone, to the Santa Clara County Real Estate Market Report for November of 2022. This is where we get together and take a look at all of the numbers for the entire county. Now, this is a great way to start calibrating yourselves in a big picture way, sort of a 10,000-foot view for what's going on in the market, because as we know, Santa Clara County covers a very large area. But if you're someone who lives in one of the other communities where I do a regular market analysis like San Jose, Morgan Hill, Gilroy, it's a great way to compare and see how your community, or at least your city, is doing compared to the county at large. So let's go ahead and jump in. But before we do, if you'd like to get in contact with me, take advantage of any of the tools for my buyers and sellers to get free estimates of your home value or to start your home search, head on over to soldbyrobert.com where you can get access to those tools. All right, let's go ahead and jump in and take a look at total active listings for November 2022 for Santa Clara County. Now, because of the sample size, we have thousands of homes instead of dozens in some cases with smaller communities. So the data here is better in terms of getting a handle on larger trends. So just keep that in mind as we go. And for those of you who are new to the way I present this data, this table is designed for you to be able to get a year-over-year comparison along with a month-to-month comparison. And how we do that is over to the right, you'll see we have November of 2022 and November of 2021 right next to each other. The red column is last year's number. So that way you can get calibrated just by looking at those last two columns to what the year-over-year change is. And then I have the previous months going back so that we can try and spot some trends so that we might be able to actually estimate where things are going to be going in the coming months for Santa Clara County. Okay, so where are we? In November of 2022, the total number of active listings, which is the inventory, and for you sellers, think of that as the homes you're competing against for the attention of buyers. For you buyers, it's the number of homes you have to choose from. We had 1,294 homes in November of 2022, and in November of 2021, we had 830. That is, if we're rounding, a 56% increase in inventory, so a gigantic leap from last time. And remember, our year-over-year comparison is still very different in terms of conditions that buyers are facing. Interest rates were much lower in November of 2021. So inventory was being kept lower because buyers were able to buy because there were less barriers to them being able to borrow that money. And as we all know, interest rates on mortgages are now more than double what they were a year ago. So it's the month that you look for in terms of seeing that change, where things start to go a different direction, is normally March, because that's when things started to change. Now, what do we pull out of this in terms of trends? We can see that in terms of total inventory, in July of 2022, we peaked, and then we had a pretty steady decline. It was actually a pretty big decline from July to August, and then more subtle declines until we hit November, where we had a bigger decline. All very normal, all very reasonable seasonal declines as we head into the holiday season, as we head into winter, as people don't want to be showing their homes during Thanksgiving and Christmas holidays. So actually very much in line with normal things we see in the marketplace in terms of seasonal influences. So where do we think things might go from here? Well, we can see last year in December was the bottom point. I would expect that to be true again this year. It wouldn't surprise me if for our December numbers, we see that being down, and we'll see it again down this year. But still very high compared to the same time last year. It wouldn't surprise me if 50 to 60% higher than the same time last year is still the standard. And then right once we hit January, it should be steadily increasing until we get to June and July. All right, let's go ahead and head over to the next thing, which is new listings. These are sellers that decided to put their homes on the market in November of 2022. In this month of November of 2022, it was 751 homes were added to the market. Last year, that number was 983. So about 24% fewer sellers than last year decided to put their homes on the market this year in November. And if we're, again, looking at trends, we can see we bottomed out in December of last year. Again, very normal for the season, right? We're talking about Christmas time and holidays. Fewer people want to put their homes on the market. But then a very quick ramp up when we hit the January. January saw 1,200, then 1,600, then 2,000. So a relatively quick jump up. So that really the first quarter of the year last year, March, was sort of the good spot, I think, for folks to get onto the market. Because you want to try to pick a sweet spot if you're a seller. You want to be there before the crush of new listings come up so that buyers are able to focus more on your property, because as you can see in April and May, we had pretty big additions to the real estate market. I frequently find that you're going to do better as a seller if you get earlier in the market rather than later. But you don't want to time it too early and then have your listing become stale or stay on the market too long. In terms of projections, I think we're going to see the exact same stuff we saw last year. I think we'll see fewer listings coming on in December and then a ramp up as we saw. But again, overall being down compared to the same time last year. Santa Clara County homes sold. So these are the total number of homes that actually sold in November. But remember, that is not the number that you see in terms of total number of homes sold reflects the homes that closed escrow. So always keep in mind that escrow takes anywhere from 30 to 45 days to close. So the contracts that were signed for these sales were signed in the previous month of October or even late September. So keep that in mind. This is always one of those lagging numbers a little bit. The greatest activity we want to start with is when the contracts are written. Because that's really what's most relevant to sellers and buyers, assuming that it closes escrow. But this number represents closed escrows, not when the contract was signed. Now, we can see that compared to last year, we're down almost 50%. And last year, it was at 1,525 homes sold in the month of November. This year, 766 homes. So a dramatic drop from the same time last year. We just aren't getting the volume of homes getting sold as we've seen in past months. And a great deal of that is due to the interest rates that we've seen really escalate over 2022. Now, we've peaked out in April in terms of homes sold, which is interesting because remember, that indicates that those offers were probably made in March, which indicates an earlier than normal time period, at least normal if you're talking about the real estate market in general across the country. Typically, people think that May is the right time to list your home, and I'd argue that given these numbers, the right time to get your home onto the market is probably more like February or March right now, if you're trying to get in there before the crush of other listings end up hitting the market. All right, let's go ahead and take a look at average original list price. Now, this number represents what the home listed for the day it got put on the MLS. This is not what the list price was at the time the seller accepted an offer. And the reason why I share this number with you is to get into the minds of the sellers. What were their expectations when they listed the home on that very first day? Because it calibrates you to what they were thinking. How much more should my home be worth compared to a year ago? Well, taking that number, we can see that in November, sellers expected their homes to be worth 11.8% more than the year before on average. Now, keep that number in mind as we move forward. And then take a look at what the actual sales amounts were in November. Now, last year, 1,600,000 was the average. And just to calibrate you, this is a number I did have to massage a little bit because during that month last year, we had some realtors who entered incorrect data in terms of accidentally putting in too many zeros for list prices. So what I did is normalized it for last year, excluding those numbers, and then just sort of rounded it to the biggest number just to give us a good reference number, but not the exact to the dollar number for that month. All right, so last year we saw that, again, 1,600,000. This year, 1,788,000 is what sellers expected on average. We're going to see coming up here in a minute the reality of how that's been impacted in terms of trends. Really interesting in terms of its inconsistent nature, right? If you look at the list price in July being low compared to August, and because there's a larger sample size here, it's really hard to explain a lot of that. What's interesting, though, is I think that what we are seeing here is an example of homes at the higher end thinking it's time to try and do their profit taking. Now, unfortunately, at this time of the year, they actually were a little late to the party in terms of trying to do profit taking on a lot of more luxury priced homes. Luxury homes are the hardest first hit in any market where we're seeing high interest rates as buyers adjust their purchasing range lower to accommodate lower interest rates. So let's go ahead and compare that 11.8% expectation of appreciation over the year to what homes actually sold for on average. So very disconnected, right? The number that sellers expect versus the number sellers got in November, very different. One, almost a 12% increase was expected. The reality is a 5.2% decrease from the same time last year on average. So again, last year, we saw in November of 2021, the average sales price of $1,715,000. This year, $1,625,000. And that is the lowest point going all the way back to October of 2021 in terms of what the average sales price was. And we saw our peaks on sales price in March, April, and May. I think that's very normal because, again, remember, the sales prices would reflect when it closed escrow. So think about those March folks who probably got into contract in February, so they got the last of the good rates, right? That's and check out that difference. So that's when things started to change. So they locked in their rates in February, perhaps late January. Their escrow closed in March or April. And that's a reflection of that. And then we see in May, interest rates started to go up in March, and then we started to see them taper off after May pretty dramatically in terms of average sales price. And again, because of the sample size, these are relatively good numbers to rely on in terms of understanding the trends and where buyers' dollars are drawn to. And this clearly reflects buyers being drawn to a lower price band, and obviously because of interest rates. All right, and what's interesting to note is the dramatic difference between expectations and reality on this one. It is definitely a scenario where we need agents to be intelligently doing their market analysis to more accurately reflect what the value is and educate sellers on what the real market is doing right now. Because here's the problem. With a decline in sales price, if you're not adjusting correctly and you miss it, well, that leaves you on the market for another 30 days. And after that 30 days, the sales price is likely less than it was a month ago. So you end up constantly chasing lower and lower sales amounts for your home. So this is one of those times when really picking the right price. So many people approach it with well, we can always reduce the price. Well, you can, but in a market where prices are reducing over time, you want to calibrate yourself to the right number first, because the right number today to sell your price is higher than what the right number is going to be in a month or 2 months. And you want to try to get the highest number possible within the window that you've decided you want to sell your home. So just as a tip, this as a side note here, if you're a seller, if your home has been viewed 5 to 10 times, and normally you want to, if your home hasn't been viewed 5 to 10 times within the first week or two, you need to have a conversation with your real estate agent about why. But if you haven't gotten an offer at that point, you need to have a serious conversation about why you haven't gotten an offer. Take a look at the homes you're competing with, get an idea of where you're priced compared to them. Look at homes that have sold while yours has not, because you need to act quickly on these new realities of the market if you want to get the best possible results for yourself. All right. Let's go ahead and take a look at percent of list price. Now, this reflects how much over or under asking price buyers are paying for homes. And as we were trying to get into the psychology of sellers when we were looking at original list price, this is our opportunity to get into the minds of buyers and also a little bit of an insight into their experience. How much competition are they experiencing? Now, last year in November of 2021, homes were selling on average at 108% of their list price. So 8% above asking price at the time the home sold. And that's what this represents. This does not represent the percentage as it relates to original list price. It relates to the actual sales price, the sales price in the contract versus the list price at the time the contract was submitted. Because remember, we're trying to look into the buyer's mind on this one. So when they looked at these homes and they made an offer, this is based off of the list price they saw at the time they made their offer, because this is what we want to calibrate ourselves to. And in general, it was 99.6% of the list price at the time the home was where an offer was accepted. So only 0.4% below, but the trend isn't ridiculously hard to spot here. We've got homes selling, peaking at 15.3% over list price at the time the home sold, then steadily decreasing after March, and really bottoming out in August and sort of staying flat throughout that period until today. But where are we going to go in the coming months? And remember, this is the entire county on average. So my guess is this number is going to continue to go down a little bit and tend to nudge closer to 95%. I don't know where it'll bottom out. It's going to depend on what happens with interest rates. There's a lot of different fingers in this particular pie in terms of how it's going to turn out. But my expectation would be to see homes selling for less than asking price pretty regularly and more commonly as we move forward, particularly given the disconnect between list prices and what homes are selling for in November of 2022. All right. Days on market. This is how long it's taking to get a home sold as of November of 2022. You can see a very definite trend here. Compared to last year, the amount of time it takes to get a home sold in Santa Clara County is up 61.1%. It was taking 18 days a year ago, and it's taking 29 days today in November of 2022. We're almost to that point. We're at 30 days. And I think of 30 days as a significant number because I think psychologically, if sellers come to grips with the fact their home has not sold in 30 days, there is something in their head that's going to start thinking, maybe I need to entertain prices below my asking price, or I need to be willing to take a bigger discount. To be honest, once these people got to 14 days without an offer or without enough showings, a conversation should have happened. Again, this is another example demonstrating how important it is for acting quickly if you're trying to get your home sold for the best possible price, because as the months go on, that price is dropping, not increasing, and you don't want to get caught chasing it month after month. All right. Days on market. These are the number of homes that have reduced their price in November of 2022, and that stands at 40.6%. So almost 41% of homes have reduced their list price. Last month, it was at 45.4%, and I think as home sellers get more calibrated to what's happening in the market, as homes come onto the market calibrated to reality, we'll see this number dropping. These are obviously reflecting properties that were already on the market and are reducing it because they simply cannot compete in the marketplace right now if they want to grab the attention of the dwindling number of buyers that are out there shopping for a home. Now, I want to offer you a little bit more info here because I think this is one of the critical pieces of data that you need to know if you're a buyer or a seller. Now, this is all of Santa Clara County, but the average amount in November of 2022 that a home was reduced in price was $162,194.95. So that represents the average. The median was $100,000, meaning half of the homes that reduced their price were above $100,000 and half the homes on the market that reduced their price were below $100,000. So that's a pretty interesting number to realize that the middle of the pack number was $100,000. That's pretty significant. Now, the maximum number, the greatest discount in the month of November of 2022 was $2 million. The lowest reduction was, this is showing negative 200. So we actually had one where they increased the price by 200,000. Let's see here. Let me see. Okay, here we go. Actually, there were two. There was one which is mind-boggling. So this is a good example of somebody's not having the right conversation with someone. So someone has a home, $1.4 million, where they raised the price to 1.524, and the home has been on the market for 111 days. That's not the way this works. You are going to make things worse for yourself. Where's the other one? There has to be another one here that did the same thing. Let's see. Here it is. 5.38 million up to 5.58 million, and this one's been on the market for 58 days. If you've been on the market for 58 days, this is not what you do to improve your situation. So I'm not sure what's being thought there, but clearly there's some reevaluation that needs to happen. Now comes from a grand total of 385 homes that reduced their price in Santa Clara County in the month. In terms of days on market, because there's obviously going to be a direct correlation between you reducing your price and how long you've been on the market. Now, the average days on market for homes on this list that reduced their price is 75 days. The average or the median number is 66, meaning half the homes were above 66 days, half the homes were below 66 days, and the max is 297 days. With a minimum of 1 day. So there was one property that literally reduced their price 1 day after they put it onto the marketplace, which seems a little interesting. But when you look at this and realize how many homes have been on the market for 70, 60, 71, 51, 40, 74, 39 days, these folks aren't acting quickly enough. And you as a seller, if you have a listing where your home has been on the market this long, you need to have a conversation with your agent to find out what you need to do to change this dynamic. If you have to get your home sold, if you don't have to, my suggestion would be take it off the market. Wait for the market to turn. It will. It may take a year. It may take 2 years. It may even take 3 years. But if your timeline can extend out that far, that's probably what you should do. If you need to sell now, though, if you have to pull the profit out of your home, you have to have a conversation with your agent about what needs to happen to get your home sold this month. Not next month, not January, not February, but right away. So keep that in mind. All right, so we've gotten a pretty good overview of Santa Clara County. Go and check out my other real estate videos on the markets in places like Gilroy, San Jose, and Morgan Hill to sort of calibrate yourself. If you'd like to join me for coffee and real estate, now this is something I do on the third Saturday of every month, and we cover all of the data sort of muxed together for Santa Clara County in general, San Jose, Morgan Hill, and Gilroy to really get that blended together bird's eye 10,000 foot view. Join me. It's 10 a.m. third Saturday of each month. You can find information on how to participate at my website, soldbyrobert.com, and it's a live chat. So bring your questions, comments. If you have anything you want to discuss, clear up, get some more insights into, feel free to join me. Happy to address those things live as we're covering all the data. And of course, in addition to covering the usual market data, we also hit the big news items for our local markets that might be affecting buyers and sellers and investors here locally. All right, folks, the goal, as always, is to leave more knowledge on the table than I take up in your time. Absolutely hope we've accomplished that. Thanks again for listening. I'll talk to y'all next time.